Start the clock.
Good afternoon. At the tone, time will be
Real time.
Welcome back to another episode of Supercoach breaking down the top 10 teams. In today's episode, we'll be taking a peek inside the players in the top 10 teams. Just for fun and to hopefully get an advantage going forward to try to maybe go a little bit POD-ish compared to what the top 10 players are doing. And just to see who they brought in over the last couple of weeks. Also, we'll be looking at Whitfield. I think most of us have him. Who to bring in for him, which defender is going to be best going forward for the rest of the year. So let's get started by just taking a look at the current top 10. So bringing it up here, there hasn't been too much changes. I think about 5 in, 5 out. But the big story's right, it's a great, I guess. He had a 250-point lead over the field, and he's had a bit of bad luck with injuries over the last couple of weeks, and he's sort of come right back in. So I expected him to have a bigger lead going into the buys, but now his lead's been cut down from 250 to about, 50 points, is it? 40 points. So yeah, that's interesting, and he'll be finding it hard to stay in that spot for the next 3 weeks. I think the buys are going to sort of really mix things up a little bit with one, how lucky people have been with injuries and people getting dropped, and 2, people that have maybe put a bit more planning in than others have, and 3, people that are willing to sort of burn trades to keep up with the Joneses during the trade period. So yeah, it should be interesting going forward. But the big question I think everyone has, or most people have, because Whitfield's in 90% of the top 10 teams, and I think he's in most of our teams. I think most people would have brought him in after he's come back from injury. So there's a couple people probably like me that have brought him in twice now and have had to get rid of him. He's been a bane in my existence. So I've wasted 4 trades now on bringing him in. Then I ditched him when he got injured. It was a mistake. Brought him back in. Now he's injured again, and it's a collarbone. I don't see him missing anything less than 4 at a minimum. I mean, it's a pretty serious injury, and 6 sort of at the maximum. So I'm not prepared to hold him for the buys, even though I don't have that many trades left. So I'm willing to risk it for the biscuit, as they say, and just trade until we got none left. So Whitfield out. So the question is who to bring him in. So let's take a look at the defenders and sort of make a case for who you should be bringing in for Whitfield. So here's the top scoring defenders by average for the season. So who we're replacing Whitfield with. So I'll go down the list from highest and sort of make a case for him. I think Jake Lloyd's a no-brainer if you don't have him. Bring him straight in. Plays this week, misses the middle, and plays the last round in the buys. So if he's buy-friendly to you, I think he's definitely the one to bring in if you don't have him. Shannon Hearn would have been sort of a no-brainer pick, especially for me, someone that's missing him. But he's gone and got himself injured. He's missing this week. 50% of the top 10 teams have Shannon Hearn. So they're going to be a little bit unlucky. It's unfortunate that's happened right next to the buys for those people. And I know a lot of people brought him in over last week or the last couple of weeks. So it sucks for them. Lloyd's in 90% of the top 10 teams. So he's not a POD player when it comes to the top 10 teams. But I think he's definitely the most bankable out of all the defenders. So if you don't have him, I'd still go in that direction. Whitfield obviously injured. Basher Hall is the big one. Average of 127 over the last 3 weeks. Price point at 541k. Low break even, only going to go up. So if you don't get him in this week, you've probably missed the boat. The question mark on Hawley for me is, can he keep it up? History says he can't. He's had big games in the past, or big runner games, and he's never been able to consolidate it over a season. So that's knock number 1. Knock number 2, he's injury prone. He always seems to miss games due to some sort of hammy or some sort of knock. So I'm a big gun shy on Hawley. So I'd stay away, my personal opinion. Luke Ryan, average of 104. He's very POD-ish. I think he might be in one of the top 10 teams only. And I'll have to double check that. But yeah, is either in 0 or 1. So he's a complete POD. He has a really good average of 104. He plays a key sort of sweeper role for Fremantle, so they like using him coming out of defense, and he takes a lot of intercept marks, and he's definitely a Supercoach friendly player and a POD. Price point at 523, I think is good value, and he's definitely I'm bringing him in next week. Basically, I've got 4 primo defenders. I'm bringing in one this week that would make. Sorry, I've got 3 primo defenders. Going to be 4 this week after Whitfield goes out. He will be number 5, and then we look to get Hearn after the buys when he drops in price. So yeah, Luke Ryan next week for me. Tom Stewart for the Cats. Nicely priced at the 500k, just slightly over 500k. Average is 101. Doesn't take the kickouts, so that's a knock against him. I think there's a few others better. Sicily, I've got him in my team. I brought him in at such a high price point. I think it was about 550. I completely overpaid for him. I'm unhappy with the trade, but he sort of bottomed out in price at 491, which makes him appealing. I don't think he's playing that much of a Supercoach friendly role, at least since I brought him in. He doesn't take all the kickouts. He splits them with, I forget his name, but he's a spot whoever is taking points off him. I think there's others better than Sicily. Rory Laird being one of them. I think Laird's a safer bet. You're basically playing an extra 15k for him. And I just think he's a little bit safer than Sicily. Plays more on the ball. And you sort of know he's going to get his touches every week. While Sicily sort of relies on those intercept marks. And if he's been playing a more accountable role. So, yeah, not that Supercoach friendly. So I'd sort of stay away. Rich, I'm not really sold on. He doesn't excite me. Either does Johannesson. Zach Williams coming back in. A lot of people have traded him out for Lockie Whitfield, and there'll be a bunch of people trading him back in. For me, I just don't trust him injury-wise. He's had a bad run of injuries over the last, 3 years. Happened again with the hammy scare. Missed 2 weeks. They said it was, he didn't even tear it. It was sort of just tight. Williams was in 100% of teams. Now only in 30, so 70% of the top 10 teams have traded him off. The ones that are holding him probably happy that they did and didn't go to Whitfield. Yeah, so I'd stay away just because of the injury concern. For me personally, because I'm running out of trades and I can't afford to bring in players with poor injury history. In saying that, the person that I'm looking to is a little bit further down the list, and that's Wayne Malira from the Crows. He has a 95 average pre-injury, and I'm saying it's his price, so I'm willing to back him in at that price at 411 for a defender that can score 95, and I think he's going to be playing a lot more midfield time as the season goes on for the rest of the year. I'm willing to take the bet on him at that price, and yeah, so he's definitely one that I'd recommend. He's in 0% of the top 10 teams, and I think you'll see him in there come the buys that a lot of people that are going to him. Just at that price point, it's pretty hard to pass up a 95 average at 400k, especially at this time of the year. Going over some of the other players in the top 10 teams. So Smith's still in 100%, no surprise. Marty Hall's in 90%, and he's back this week. Ainsworth's in 100%, that sort of rookie downgrade that everyone went to. Zuzman's in 90%. I think he's been a big reason why that top 10 sort of done well the last couple of weeks with the average over 100 and set to rise in price quite a bit over the next couple of weeks, 3 weeks. Clark, a rookie that everyone started with, only in 10% of teams. Most people have traded him out. Rory Laird's in 40% of teams. Darcy Moore, most people have traded out, only in 20% of teams. And that sort of sums up the backline. So we'll get to the midfield. So with the midfielders, we can see the highest averaging midfielders here. Lockie Neal's still in front, but Josh Kelly coming with a bullet has been sort of great. He's been the primo like the last 5 weeks. What's his average over the last 3? 139. And he sort of price point a lot of people out with his price now at 659. A lot of people are going to struggle to bring him in if you haven't already. He is in 70% of the Supercoach top 10. Lockie Neal is in 100%, no surprise. Fife in 100, Cripps in 100. You're sort of seeing the usual suspects. So what are some of the interesting things to look at? Sloan had that poor week last week due to injury, but he's getting up this week, so he's covering and saving a lot of people. He's in 40% of the top 10 teams. I think McRae's been the most surprising since we've done this from 6 weeks ago. This is the third breaking down the top 10 that we've done. So McRae only in 30% of teams still. And he hasn't had that bad of a year. I mean, let's have a look. He's the fifth best averaging midfielder with 113, sixth best. And I mean, he did have a high price point of $670 at the start of the season. But yeah, I just still find it interesting that only 30% of the top 10 teams are carrying him. So hopefully he gets his act together and can start scoring big. And he is a POD for people chasing the top 10. An interesting one also was Stocker. 60% of teams are carrying Stocker, and he's missing this week due to injury apparently. So that's sort of going to stuff up a few people there. Merritt is in 10% of teams. Rockcliffe is in 20% of teams. Stack has been a really good rookie in 70% of teams. Atkins, surprisingly, only in 20% of teams, so a lot of people would have traded him out. He was in 60% like 3 weeks ago. 30% are still holding Drew. Surprisingly, I thought he would be gone in most teams. Doesn't look like he's getting back into that Port side. I haven't checked this week, actually, if he has. I don't think he's coming back this week. Trelaw, 20%. Libba, so 6 weeks ago, he was in 90% of teams, and with role change, he's in 0% now. So that's a little funny. Hayes from the Bulldogs, 30% of teams still carrying him, and he doesn't look like getting a game, so he's a liability over the buys. Scott from North Melbourne, sort of a rookie bust, had that 100 in his first game round one. Looked like he was going to make heaps of money, and he's been sitting on 50% of the top 10's bench. He's on my bench as well. I think I'll just keep him there for the rest of the year. He's not worth a trade at 70k at this stage anyway. Welsh is in 70% of teams, so 70% carrying him for the buys, and I think that will be looking to upgrade him, including myself, going into that third bye week. Oliver is in 20%. It's always a nice POD. So there's a few nice PODs when we look to who we might be looking to bring in. Personally, I've been talking to Cogs and bringing him in this week, actually. So let's take a look at Cogs. An average of 106. People can say it's point chasing, that 200-point game. But I say otherwise. I say he's had reasons for low scores this year due to injury. I think it's definitely affected him going back, not last week, but the 3 weeks before that. And the GWS draw is pretty nice. It's very nice over the rest of the way. So at 510k, I think he's worth a punt, and I will be bringing him in. And my last midfield spot, which should be fixed up next week. Look, won't go POD-ish. It will probably be Lachie Neale for me, just because I can't ignore he's the highest scoring midfielder, and he will bottom out in price about that 580, maybe 570 mark. And I probably can't say no to that. It'll be Welsh to Lachie Neale. But there's definitely cases for Bontempelli. Gaff, I really like. Even Elliott, West Coast home draws pretty good too. I think they have a lot of home games on the back end of the season. So that's all the interesting stuff in the midfield. Double check the list. Jolly. Yeah, that sort of makes up the midfield. So the rucks are pretty self-explanatory. Everyone wants to have Grundy and Gawn at this point. They're the 1-2 and they're in front of everyone, and it's not even funny. So Grundy is in 100% of teams. No surprise. Gawn, a little bit surprising, is only in 70. So a few people are carrying Rob. One's carrying Goldstein as ruck one. So Rob's got to go this week for most of those people. I know the number one team's got basically Lysette, Grundy, and Rob, so he can and he's got Bynes, so he can easily put Bynes in the forward line and Lysette in the forward into the rucks if he wanted to. But he's going to want Grundy Gawn going forward, definitely. So it'll be interesting to see what he does. But yeah, so it's basically self-explanatory. Granit Gone in the rucks, no-brainer. Forward line. So Bogue's come back to the pack a little bit. I think when we first did this, he was averaging about 120. Now averaging 111. Still a solid choice for the rest of the year, but staying away just because he burnt me last year, and I've already missed his high scores, I think. And I think he comes down a little bit to the pack again. He probably ends up a top 3 scoring forward, though. So no doubt about that. But I think most of his big scores, hopefully for my sake, are gone. He is in 80% of the top 10 teams. Kelly is in 100% of teams. He's gone right up. So basically, when we first did this, 6 weeks ago, he was in 50% of teams, then 90, then 100. So he bottomed out, and everyone's basically jumped on board and reaped the rewards. He probably ends up the highest scoring midfielder, forward. It's him or Dangerfield, basically. Dunkley is having a really good last 3 weeks, 112 average. If he stays in the midfield, I think it's a no-brainer. You want him in your forward line, and he's someone I'm definitely looking to bring in the second week of the buys. He is in 70% of the top 10 teams, so he's not even a POD anymore. I think most of the top 10 jumped on him when he bottomed out in price. He got as low as 450. He's currently priced at 550, so it's like 100k he's jumped up over the last 3 weeks. Playing some good footy in the middle. Caleb Daniels had a good couple of weeks, still averaging over 100. He is in 40% of the top 10 teams. Heaney's a bit of a surprise. He's only in 40% of teams. A lot of people have jumped off him. I'm still think he's at his best. He's a top 3 forward. No qualms about that. It's just about his role and if you can get midfield time. He's still averaging 90, which isn't bad. Disappointing. Yeah, I'd say he's disappointing for his starting price and for what we expected him to be as a set and forget forward. Like everyone expected him to be a top 3 scoring forward, and his average of 90 has him ranked about outside the top 10, about 15th. Just having a quick look at the list. So he's gone from 6 weeks ago, 90% of teams having him, to 60% of teams, to 40% of teams. I'm not trading him, and his class will come through, hopefully. Other interesting sort of stats. Telly, 10% of teams holding Colbert, 20% of teams still holding Parker. 80% of teams have Baker, and he's been a very important player, especially since we brought him in, basically. He's got an average of 85 at a 160 price point. He'll get over the 400k mark by time his buys finish in a couple of weeks. Perfect time to upgrade him to whoever you want. And yeah, he's been obviously an important piece to those teams' success, and that's why he's in 80% of the teams. Surprisingly, Bolts was only in 0% of the top 10 teams. Don't know how that worked out. But he's been a good cash generator, and he'll be handy over the next couple of weeks. Warple's in 40% of teams. I think he's a good mid-price starting player, averaging 90. You take that at the start of the year for his price point. Richard Charlie's still getting held by 30% of people. I'm a bit surprised at that, but he's sort of bottomed out at price like at 250, 270, and he stayed around that mark, and he's someone that really can't score over the 50-point mark, except the one time everyone needed him, and he scored over 100 when he was on my bench. Not butthurt at all there. And Billings in 20% of teams. So for me, it's Dunkley going forward. The surprising one is Mundy's in 0% of the top 10 teams. And he had a poor week. Last week? I think he only scored, a 60. But he has an average of 99. His 3-round average, surprisingly, is only 91. It must have been dropped down by that game last week because he had some big scores before that. I think the last time we did this, he had an average of about 127, so he was flying. So he'd be looking to bottom out a price after his buys. The problem is he doesn't play this week. He plays next week and the week after, so you're not going to be able to get him at a discounted price. So for me, it's Dunkley that I'll be looking to bring in to finish my forward line. And Roland Marshall's the one that's only in 1% of the top 10% of the top 10 teams, so only one of them has him. Really nice price point at 462. He's Grundy light, basically. He's a young version of Grundy. He's only getting better as he gets more confidence and more game time under his belt and a little bit more experience. So he's definitely one that I'd recommend getting. And he's very, very buy friendly. So he plays next week and the week after when a lot of teams need forwards. So that wraps it up for this week. The buy should be fun. I've got 21 playing this week, so we're hoping to move up the rankings. So we'll see you guys on Sunday night to go over the rounds. And yeah, if you liked the video, leave it a like and subscribe to the channel because that always helps. So yeah, we'll see you guys next week. Bye.